Welcome back, everybody. It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. This will be highlighting 5 players that I'd be looking to sell high on ahead of week 9. These are guys that, in general, I just don't have a lot of confidence going down the stretch here. We're through 8 weeks. We kind of know what matchups are good, what are bad going forward. Kind of have a general idea of what each team wants to do, and it sort of gives us the ability to look forward, especially towards those playoffs, and see what players we're going to be able to rely on when we get to the games that actually matter. Obviously, if you're in a position where you don't feel confident you're going to make the playoffs, these games matter a lot more. But if you're sitting at 6-2, 7-1, feeling really good about your odds of making the playoffs, what you really want to do right now is look towards those playoffs and make sure your team's as prepared to take advantage of those matchups there as possible. So lots of nuance here, of course. So if you guys do have any specific trade questions, just let me know in the comments below. I love helping you guys out there. Love seeing what sort of trades you guys are cooking up. It gives me some inspiration as well for the trades I look to make. And it's just generally a lot of fun. This is my favorite video to make every week, this and the buy low video. So love trading. It's one of my favorite things to do in fantasy. I think it's one of the most fun parts of it, and just something I really love doing every single week. So yeah, that being said, we got 5 good players to talk about here. Normally I go every position. Couldn't come up with a quarterback for you guys this week. Just didn't want to like the only one that maybe came to mind was Jaden Daniels, but I don't really feel like he's a sell high because the schedule's still not too hard down the stretch. But and even he's just great. So I don't really view any quarterbacks as sell highs. It's just too tough to do that in general. But yeah, we got 2 running backs, 2 receivers, and a tight end to talk about. And then other than that, let's just get into it here. Starting things off with what to me is the most obvious sell high at the running back position this week is going to be Ramondre Stevenson. And the main issue is just that I can't trust him. He had 2 touchdowns this week, that's fantastic, but I just can't trust the efficiency. He averaged less than 2.5 yards per carry. The Patriots are lucky to score twice as a team each week, so Ramondre scoring 2 touchdowns not going to be something that happens all that often. It's really different if you watch the buy low video. I mentioned Raheem Mostert as someone that I'd be looking to target, and I think it'd be the similar thing. Like he scored 2 touchdowns as well, so maybe people are going to be talking about him as a sell high. But the offenses are just completely different. If you had to make me bet who's going to score more touchdowns the rest of the way, assuming health, like Raheem Mostert's clearly a much better bet to score a lot of touchdowns going forward. But Ramondre's just not a guy that I'm going to bet on that happening. And he's just not a guy that I'm going to feel confident starting any given week. He'll probably have 3 or 4 more good games the rest of the season, but I don't think it's very predictable. The Patriots are going to be pretty heavy underdogs in every single game in all likelihood the rest of the season. So you're not going to be looking at a favorable game script coming up. You're just going to be, he'll be good in the games where the Patriots either fall behind and dump it down to a million times, or where the game they're somehow magically competitive like this last week and end up scoring a couple points. But it's going to be tough to predict that, and because of that, you're not necessarily likely to actually benefit from any of the good games he has. I think I would just look for someone a little bit more reliable. If you can trade him for Najee Harris, that's a huge win. Especially Najee's on bye this week, so he might be a guy you could target. Players like that, I would much rather Rashad White. I'd rather have than Ramondre. Those trades you could probably get done. I just think that it's going to make you sleep a lot better at night having those guys on your roster instead of Ramondre. Maybe a controversial one here, but I'm going to talk about Jonathan Taylor as a potential sell high here. And the main thing here is I just don't really love the playoff schedule. The Colts play the Broncos, the Titans, and the Giants. It's just going to be 3 straight games with extremely low over-unders. Like the Broncos, one of the best defenses in the NFL, not an offense that really scares you either. The Titans and Giants, 2 teams that are, not really great on either side of the ball, but if you wanted to talk about the strengths of those teams, it's their defenses. They won't put up a lot of points either. Titans will be a close, annoying divisional game. It's going to be a lot of games where we might struggle to break 30 total points. So the whole touchdown upside situation there for Jonathan Taylor just really isn't all that exciting. And I don't really see Taylor putting up a huge spike week at any point in the playoffs. That's what you're looking for out of a guy that you're drafted in the late first, early second round. You're hoping he can be a guy that's a huge difference maker for you in the playoffs. And I just don't think he can do that. And on top of that, the ankle injury is obviously scary. Great. It was great to see him come back. He looked great this last week, but he's obviously dealt with an ankle injury already this year. It's been a nagging thing for him. So selling him while he's healthy, it makes some level of sense. I don't like calling players injury prone, but Jonathan Taylor and the ankle injuries have been a recurring thing at this point. It's something that at least has me a little bit scared. And then he's got a week 14 bye too. So you're looking at 4 straight weeks where I'm just not super excited because you don't have him in week 14. So if you need him to get in the playoffs, he's not going to be there for you. And then you've got 3 straight matchups against teams that I don't really think are going to allow him to go off for you. And I think you can get elite RB1 value for him. I don't really view him as a top 5 running back the rest of the season. And I think that's sort of where right on the fringe of what he's valued at. So if you could make a lateral move, I'd trade him for Kyron, who's already through his bye. If you can get Bijan, Jameer Gibbs, Brees, maybe, obviously Derrick Henry, Kenneth Walker I might maybe have, I'd rather have. There's a lot of guys that I think are better than him the rest of the season, and I don't think, a lot of those names, you could potentially get a 1-for-1 done, or if you want to look at the receiver position or any of that, I think you can get more value out of Jonathan Taylor than what he's actually going to give you when we get toward the playoffs here. Next up, we got the first receiver on this list. It's going to be Garrett Wilson, and it's going to be kind of controversial because people are, I can tell what you all are going to say right away is, hey, Garrett Wilson's the wide receiver 7 of the season right now. That's in half PPR. And yeah, he is, but yeah, they haven't had their bye yet. He hasn't missed any games, so he's actually the wide receiver 14 in points per game. And, that's first off, that's disappointing based off of where you drafted him. You drafted him at the end of the first round to be a top 10 wide receiver, and he's not delivering on that. And then he's only going to get less and less involved in this offense as Davante Adams gets more comfortable here. Like it's pretty clear that Adams should trend towards being the number one wide receiver in this offense, and that's assuming things go as planned for the Jets. Like the Jets look like they might just implode here. They're 2-6 now. They've dropped 5 straight. They're looking like a team that might just be down and out. Nobody seems happy in that locker room. It could be a team that very well gives up. And the playoff schedule is not necessarily something that's bad, but they have a championship matchup against Buffalo, who's actually been really good against opposing wide receivers. So he's not a guy that I'm going to feel confident in playing in Week 17, which is, that's the money-making week. You want Garrett Wilson to go out there and be a difference maker for you that's going to win you your championship, and I don't see that happening. And even more, there's more risk associated with this. Like Garrett Wilson, he's a trade candidate, so it's just tough for these guys to get traded mid-season and end up performing at a high level. They got to adjust to a new team. We just saw Amari Cooper go 1 catch for 3 yards last week. Like it's tough to acclimate really quickly and be a huge contributor there. So that's a risk. I don't think he'll get traded. He's too young and too talented for them to do that, but it's at least been discussed and floated around a little bit. And then there's also risk, like if the Jets are 2-9 here in a few weeks, why play Rodgers if he's a guy that you want to come back next year? Like I could see them shelving Rodgers, saying, hey, let's just get some young guys some run here, run it back next year and see what we can do. Like that's on the table here for the Jets, and that's obviously concerning because we've seen what Garrett Wilson does with even worse quarterback play. So it'd be concerning. I think that Garrett Wilson's a guy that you can still get a lot for, and people are still excited about because he's been solid. You can say, hey, look, he's the wide receiver 7, and I don't think he's going to perform at that level the rest of the way. He hasn't actually performed at that level so far this season, and I would look to move off of him while his value is probably still not as high as it's going to be the rest of the way. Next up, we got one more receiver, and this one hurts for me to talk about, but Tank Dell, I really do love him long term, but I just think we sort of need to consider this a bit of a down year for him after coming off of an injury. We saw this happen with Tony Pollard last season, broke his leg. I think typically people just say, hey, they broke their leg. It's not an ACL, it's not a soft tissue injury, any of that. People just assume they'll come back and be 100%, but it seems like this is an injury that actually just does take some time here. Not that he looks horrible, but he just doesn't look like the same Tank Dell right now, and I don't really see that as being something that is going to get fixed this season. Tony Pollard looks great this year, but he didn't look great until near the very end of last season. So I think it just could be a little bit for us to really trust Tank Dell here, and I sort of view this as your last maybe opportunity to sell high on Tank Dell. We got news this morning that Stephon Diggs did indeed tear his ACL, so at least for Week 9, Tank Dell is the number one wide receiver for CJ Stroud, and I think that's going to be a nice sell the news opportunity here. I think the news is better for Tank Dell than what's actually going to happen here because Tank Dell is still the clear wide receiver 2 in this offense. Nico Collins is going to be back in Week 10, so you get 1 week of Tank Dell being great. 1 week of Tank Dell being great, and they've also got a Week 14 bye here, which is obviously not exciting. That's a week you can't use him, and it's going to be a near must-win week for you guys. 2 weeks later, you got to match up against the Chiefs in Week 16. That's horrible. You don't want to trust him there. And on top of that, the Texans, their defense is pretty solid. It's a lot better than it was last season. They can win games with their running games. You're not needing to lean on CJ Stroud the way they needed to at times last year. So I just this whole offense, especially the passing offense in general, takes a huge step down right now. Defense is good enough. Nico's the clear 1 there, and I think people still, just at the name value, the excitement around CJ Stroud, you could maybe get low-end wide receiver 2 value for Tank Dell right now, and he's just not that kind of asset right now. If you can get that for him, I'd absolutely consider it. He's a really talented player. He's going to have a great career, but I just don't think this is going to be the year for him, and I'd look to capitalize on the sell high opportunity here with Diggs' injury. And finally, we've got one tight end I want to highlight, and it's going to be Tucker Kraft, who's perfectly solid. It's just that I don't view him as a top 3 tight end, and he is the tight end 3 right now in half PPR. Reed has been super quiet for a month now, and that's obviously not going to continue. This is an offense that's just got a lot of weapons. We got Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Tucker Kraft, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, Bo Melton gets involved, not to mention the running backs. You've got Josh Jacobs, Marshawn Lloyd will be back, Emmanuel Wilson's had opportunities here. There's a lot of mouths to feed in this offense, and the touchdowns have just sort of been flowing towards Tucker Kraft, which is, that's great. It's great to know that he can be used in the red zone like that, but it's just a little bit too high of a clip for me to rely on a weekly basis. On top of that, Jordan Love got banged up. We don't know if he's going to miss time here, but if he does, it's obviously a huge downgrade for the passing game. Malik Willis has played great. I don't want to take anything away from him, but he just doesn't offer the same ceiling for these pass catchers in the offense that Jordan Love does. And think people are legitimately tight end needy, and there's a lot of people that would be willing to trade a legitimate weekly starter for Tucker Kraft, and especially in leagues for those of you who maybe have two tight ends, maybe you've got Evan Ingram and Tucker Kraft, David Njoku and Tucker Kraft. I have a couple leagues where I picked up Tucker Kraft even though I had Trey McBride. I've been actively trying to move him there. Like, Tucker Kraft's a guy that I think you can get legitimate value for, and I don't think he's somebody that is going to perform at the level he's been performing at so far. So nothing wrong with him. I view him as a top 10 tight end for sure. I'm happy starting him every single week, but if you've got other options, like, I think Tucker Kraft is at least overperforming, and it's worth seeing what you can get for him right now. So that'll do it for the sell high candidates in week 9. Up next, I'll be going over starts and sits. I'll cover every single game this week. We got a couple teams on bye, so not quite 16 games this week. I think it's just the Steelers and the Niners on bye this week. So we got 15 games to cover. I'll cover the first half of them in the first video, second half of them in the second video that I'll record on Thursday night, just so we have one more night of injury reports and practice reports and all that. So I'll go over every single player in each of these games, tell you guys who should and shouldn't be in your lineup, sort of what I expect to happen in those games. So stay tuned for that one. Those ones are a lot of fun. I'll also go live Sunday morning, 1 hour before the games kick off. So at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern time, I'll go over all the latest injury updates, give you guys advice on any start-sit questions you guys have, and just get you guys ready to roll for week 9. So if you want to make sure you don't miss any of that, just make sure you subscribe to the channel. If you made it this far in the video, give it a thumbs up. It just helps me out quite a bit, and I'll catch you with the next one, guys. Peace. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.